Welcome everybody to the IDF debates titled Building Blocks. This is basically a series of conversations that we've been wanting to do for a while, Rajshree and me. Rajshree is the founder of India Design Forums, and I'm Mrinalini Ghadiok. I'm an architect, writer, and researcher. And together we've curated this series where we're basically trying to highlight certain issues or certain concerns within the architecture community and have people and professionals come together and discuss them in an open and candid format. This started off as a conversation between Rajshree and me, and today we're very happy to welcome you all to the second session of Building Blocks. The first one was a big success where we were talking about what is good architecture. And today we hope to talk about the business of architecture. It is a vast subject, but we've got a very interesting panel with us today, and we're hoping to find some answers and some direction as to what architecture could be, architecture is with respect to economies and with respect to the business that it is. So Rajshree, if you'd like to add something.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all keeping safe and sane during these very challenging times. Before the year ends, we decided to put this together from IDF. We'd love to have had one of our mega conferences with all the buzz and energy, but we are glad you're all here to put this online energy into these sessions. What's been most important for us is to really establish this forum as a space to have an open and honest conversation about the subject. Architecture is very vital, very important, and the premier building block for a country's economy in more ways than one. And, you know, we've got an amazing set of architects from all over, actually, over the next 3 weeks to talk. And today we are talking about the business of architecture. I often hear from architects that, you know, the business of architecture was never one of the subjects that was discussed in architecture school. And that's a question that I'd like all our panelists today to talk about as well. And really, you know, when an architect joins a firm, does he really think about the other jobs he needs to do to get the firm to be successful and sustainable over a period of time? Lots of questions, and also what's the difference between a studio and a firm and a corporate? So we've got diverse set of people here. So, and wonderful people. Thank you all for being with us, Akshat, Smita, Sanjay, and, you know, wonderful people. Smita's joined us at 4:30 in the morning from California, and Akshat's in Delhi, Sanjay's in Mumbai, and Mrinalini and I are delighted to now introduce all of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajshree. So I'm just, without spending too much more time, I'm going to introduce our speakers today. I'm going to start with Sanjay, who's in Bombay, who founded his eponymous firm in 1992, which now stands at a strength of 72, and listed among leading architects worldwide by organizations such as ArchDaily and Architizer. Sanjay Puri Architects has received more awards than one can keep track of, be it the WAC, World Architecture Festival, the Plan, LEAF, and 250 others that include 160 international awards and over 100 national awards. The practice has won architecture projects in Spain, Montenegro, Mauritius, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Montreal, Oman, Dallas, and 40 other Indian cities. With diverse portfolio of townships, schools, hotels, retail, and office buildings, they continue their quest for creating innovative design solutions that are sustainable on a large scale. Their focus lies in evolving design solutions that are contextual and creating spaces that revolutionize the way they are experienced from the essence of the firm's design philosophy. Sanjay, it's an honor to have you here, and it's such a pleasure to welcome you. We've had our own experiences over the years, but it's really interesting to be talking to you about the business of architecture today. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Mrinalini. Thank you.
So Smita Gupta is the Director of India Operations at Gensler. She is responsible for project management within the country and coordinates between Gensler's partners in India and its teams in the US. Gensler's global team reimagines the future of cities as unprecedented challenges drive us towards a critical time of transformation, is what they say. And Gensler's purpose is to create a better world through the power of design. I love that. And comes to life across 26 practice areas, client relationships, global network of leaders, and diversity of talent. And Smita offers a highly valued combination of experience in strategic planning, workplace design, and building architecture. And by working closely with clients and designers to integrate project goals through the design and documentation process, Smita has developed a holistic approach to project understanding and delivery. Thank you, Smita, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we've got Akshat Bhatt, who is the principal architect at Architecture Discipline, which is a New Delhi-based multidisciplinary design practice that was founded in 2007. His work spanning varied typologies from residential and retail interiors to large-scale public and commercial assignments, which is also spread across the length and breadth of India. Sorry. These highlight the emergence of an architectural expression that is contemporary, yet rooted in a critical understanding of regionalism. Notable projects include a town hall and sales office for the Bhartiya City Township in Bangalore, ongoing refurbishment projects for the Oberoi Group's properties in Agra and Kolkata, and the JDH Urban Regeneration Project, which aims to restore the historic walled city of Jodhpur to its former glory. Akshat also represented India on the global front with the Make in India Pavilion at Hanover in 2015, which was adjudged the best pavilion in the 65-year history of the Messe. His work is published extensively and has won many accolades, including the NDTV DAA Awards and citations from the Alliance Française and the Government of India. Again, a pleasure to have you with us, Akshat. It's interesting, we were just talking a minute ago, Akshat was my first employer, and I was his first employee. And about close to 20 years later, we've got you and we are talking about how you've gone from a small little office in the garage of an LIG housing community to now having your own big setup in a posh colony in Delhi. So if I can ask you to just kind of map your journey, tell us how you've come to this point. And if we can start the conversation by each one of you telling us what you've kind of experienced over the years from the time that you graduated and you've now established yourself as practitioners, and we can take the conversation from there. So if Akshat, if you'd like to start.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. I came back, from my studies in the UK and having worked there for a while in 2001. And, it was right after the Millennium Commission project. So we were, architecture at that time was everyday conversation. So people were talking about how the Millennium Bridge was swaying. I mean, Foston Partners was sort of embroiled in two controversies. One was the Millennium Bridge and how it was shaking. And the other was how the walls of the British Museum were too white. The British Museum library extension were too white. And of course, there were many others. So, and in those days, people didn't have mobile phones and they weren't always plugged in. So there was a lot of conversation in the tubes about what is going on in the city. It sort of got me hooked. I think, when you start having, when architecture becomes everyday conversation amongst people in a city, it just takes on a different life and a different meaning. So when I came back with, this ambition to sort of address architecture through my, through what was sort of my understanding of it, which was firmly rooted in the idea of British high tech, because those were the guys that I was inspired by and the ones that I followed. And also understanding that architecture goes beyond just architectonics. It also goes into the space in between. And it's the space in between buildings where cities happen. And I mean, I always thought there was tremendous potential for that in India. So I came back and I started working for a few practices. I was junior partner in a practice where the principal was within, and he's I think 25 years older than I am. I've just given away with his age. But after working together for a few years, I realized that I had a lot of things to say, and it was probably better if I said them on my own, and not sort of either dilute someone else's statements or nor dilute mine. Well, before I did that, I started looking for a moderate or large scale practice that was an equal opportunity practice in India, which I didn't find. And also after after a while looking, architecture discipline just kind of happened. And it happened as a fait accompli because we didn't find anyone else. I had learned, I think I was reluctant to start because I'd learned from my earlier days that, while, an architectural creative journey is an intense and fun one that we are groomed for, the journey of an entrepreneur is not one that I would wish upon anyone.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think it's a fairly, I think, to begin with. I mean, look, let's put it another way, that when I started in 2007, and even before that, when I was pretty much running a practice, so the architecture wasn't as streamlined and structured as it is today. I think it's either streamlined and structured today, or we're just a part of a different world that is a lot more streamlined and structured and respectful, right? So and if you start referencing this the world over, even if you go to YouTube and start searching for people talking about how to start an architecture practice, you'll see how difficult that journey is, because the barometer for success of good architecture is not money, is not the business of architecture. I mean, and again, like I think the title of this talk, The Business of Architecture, is a double entendre, because architecture has a business side to it. Mm-hmm. And architecture has something that it has to do as a business, a function to perform, right? So yeah, I look at it as that. And
we will be talking about both of them. We would like to kind of address both these issues as the conversation goes ahead.
So from the entrepreneurial journey that the success rate is low, and I think that the issue with India is that the entry barrier is actually quite easy, because we have a fairly large audience and we have a diverse audience that we can address. So the benchmarks for starting out are not as difficult. So it's very easy to sort of, within your first couple of years, start out and get somewhere, but it's very hard to then get beyond that to a more meaningful scale in architecture, where you're really contributing. And I think that it can be seen in especially with a lot of visual references available easily, which weren't in my time, and probably weren't. I don't want to say anything else, but they weren't really. It was difficult to find in my time. I was going to take a jab at Sanjay, but they were hard. Like, we had to write mails and letters to people and get physical photocopied documents to sort of look at drawings and reference buildings and proportioning systems and construction details and whatnot, which also gave us a sense of rigor. But I think what you can see now is there is definitely a better visual presence for interior architecture in our space, and maybe a little bit for architecture that happens within a boundary wall, but not what happens beyond it.
So let me bring in Smita over here, because Smita, you're doing a lot of interior work, especially, right? Gensler is doing a lot of that work. But tell us a little bit about how you kind of reached Gensler and your journey with them for over 2 decades.
Sure thing. And it's, there's so many cues in what Akshat's been saying. We are on the opposite end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Not that our start was the same thing as you, Akshat. It was Art Gensler, our founder, meeting the founder of Gap on a beach, and he needed an architect. He had a 2-person shop. He sent the second person over to help the founder of Gap, and we've been working with Gap ever since. So we are over 55 years old now, and we are 5,500 people. Somehow we are in the fives in the year 2020. And so how do you go, the idea of scale, how do you go from a 2-person practice? The the third person was the office manager, was Art's wife, and that's how the firm started. But here we are at 5,500. How have we been able to scale? And we don't have any engineers. This is all design professionals. So how do you do that? It's been a journey, and you're right. I think Art was more of an entrepreneur, maybe, than he was an architect. Although he was a very good architect, he'd been trained, so he had a very good eye. But he was I think, even a better businessman. So I think you're right. The entrepreneurship piece is not taught, and sometimes it comes from within. So let's go back to my journey. I actually come from a business family, and the how it is when you fall in love, you have absolutely, it doesn't have to make sense, and that was me in architecture. And some, it's so cliched, but some of it was Ayn Rand, who I completely deplore now. But at the time, I did read Fountainhead when I was 12, and somehow that sowed the seed for architecture. And I lived in Jaipur. That really helped because I was surrounded by architecture. It actually colors your life, and if you have any sensitivity to it, even small things matter. So it was, all those things were coming together. I had some friends whose fathers were architects, so I saw that side of that life of an architect. And I persuaded my parents to let me think about architecture. I started actually at JJ in Bombay and went only for a month. So this is the other side that comes in, and that I got a scholarship to study computer information systems. And this is a long time ago. If I give you the date, I will date myself completely, but this is back in the mid 80s. And that was an up and developing field, and we didn't know exactly what that meant. So I came to the States to study computer information systems. And I'm telling the story with a point. But the first love for architecture actually reared its head again. I finished my bachelor's, and then in the US, it's possible to get to switch and get a master's in architecture. They call it a first professional degree. It takes a bit longer, 3.5, 4 years to get your master's in architecture, which I went on to do. And I really felt like I had found my home. The 360-degree education, if I say nothing, there's a lot of young people on the call. I say the education of architecture, I would wish that on everybody, because it teaches you systems thinking. I had systems thinking from my computer days as well, but the design thinking that I learned in my 4 years. So all of these streams sort of came together. And in some ways, I practiced in Chicago for a while, but at Gensler, I really found the right home for me because it absorbed all the parts of the way I thought, because it wasn't just design, and but the business piece that comes from my family, that being an entrepreneur is just natural to me. And then the systems thinking that I learned with computers, the 4 years that I studied information systems, that all just came together really nicely at Gensler. And we were encouraged to bring our whole self to work, which we still do. And there was a way to do that. So at Gensler for 5 years, I was doing just interiors, and that was great because in Chicago I was doing core and shell. Then I learned how to do interiors, which is a slightly different discipline. Even how you dimension drawings is different in interiors, which Akshat and Sanjay will tell. And I'm hoping that some of this is a architectural audience, and they'll understand what I'm talking about. And then I realized that I am solving problems that I don't know who has defined the problem. This is my systems thinking coming in. So there was a discipline called consulting and strategy within Gensler. And I just saw that, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to solve problems that I don't know what has been the brief. How has the brief come about? So I switched to consulting and strategy within Gensler, and that was basically studying the client, their organization, their portfolios of real estate, and defining the brief, challenging the client on what they thought the problem was, and defining the brief so the designers could solve it. And that really is where everything comes together for me. All the design thinking. Good architecture is not precluded by defining the brief correctly, which Akshat and Sanjay will both attest to, but you're actually solving the right problem. So that said, Gensler is a business architect. They are business architects. We are the largest design firm in the world, and we've been able to do it because we believe for any design problem, our client is a partner. It's because if we do not solve their issue, and we have to get to the bottom of that issue, then we have not done our job right. Design, bringing the right design, bringing the right techniques, that is a given, that is a base. But you have to understand the issue that will make the client successful. If we are solving for retail, we need to understand the whole business for the client and solve it in a 360-degree fashion. Mrinalini, you mentioned we've been doing a lot of interiors. Yes, a lot of our business is that. So this is a really interesting fact. This is at Gensler in 1965. The Embarcadero, which is a big office complex, was being built in San Francisco at the time. And he just had this, he was a young man, and he had this epiphany that at the time the interiors of these buildings were just it was an office complex, was designed by secretaries and wives of bosses. And he's like, well, this building is getting built, it's going to be around for 100 years, but the interiors will have to be redone every 5 years or something like that. He's like, that's the business I want to be in. And he didn't come to it by chance. He'd been working with Bank of America, and he basically invented or thought about or gave discipline to the idea of workplace interiors. And so the firm is deeply rooted in that. That is just the start between that and retail, but now we do everything. As you mentioned, Rajshree, we have 26 practice areas, and that goes all the way from urban planning to aviation, to brand design. So architecture certainly, and interiors, and then also we do brand design and graphic design. So we like to say, from the Shanghai Tower, second tallest building in the world, to a wine label bottle, a 6x6 wine label bottle. The scale is immense. 5,500 people. How do you keep all these people together is really interesting. So I like to look at Gensler as, if you have read the book Moneyball, Michael Lewis's Moneyball, it's about finding niche players and giving everybody, celebrating their niche expertise, and herding all these cats together, and making sure that they can shine in their little niche development, so everybody doesn't have to do everything. So to answer your question, to your issue, Akshat, we didn't learn entrepreneurship, but there are people who are really good at entrepreneurship and understand design. How do you partner them with people who have no idea how to run the business but are excellent designers? And basically Gensler is built on that platform. And there are some guiding principles, etc. So my journey has now become entangled with Gensler. I've just been there for long enough, even though I left for 5 years to go do the strategy and consulting from the client side, which was an incredible opportunity. I was I was part of a team responsible for developing the capital plan for Genentech, which is a very strange career. It's a biotech firm, one of the oldest biotech firm. And how do you understand science well enough to understand what they will need in terms of facilities in 10 years? But it was an incredible journey, because I built almost over 2 million square feet worth $2 billion in 5 years, because we had an incredible run of biological success. So bringing all that back to establishing an India practice for Gensler, it's really been an amazing journey, but it's been almost more business than opposite to Akshat, than design for me personally. But it's business and strategy that helps me to engage with amazing synthetic minds. So I find that I'm a much more analytical brain. I know I can figure out what needs to be done. I can see when it's not done right, but I need partners to do the synthesis. And so, recognizing that I'm only part of the problem has been amazing. It's been a successful, it's been the driver for my success, because
But we are going to come. We are going to come back to you, because you've covered a lot of things, and and it's been wow. It's been overwhelming to listen to you.
Sorry about that.
No. We're delighted. We just want to split up so the audience can get information from everyone and collate it and then,
Absolutely.
get what they want.
Absolutely.
But it's been amazing. And perhaps you are at a unique position in that you already came from a background of business and then you went into this corporate situation, which kind of strained your progress further in your career. Sanjay, adding to this, my question is, can you be an effective architect without the basic understanding of the business and architecture? What has been your journey?
See, to be very, very frank, I am a very, very bad businessman. I am really bad. And this profession is such, that it's just so purely passion driven that there are times when the project sounds so exciting. It could be a tiny house somewhere, but that location is sitting on a contoured hill on the top looking down at a valley. And this guy is saying, I just want to make a 2,500 square feet house. And you do it because I think, with your profile, it looks like a tiny job. But I'm saying like, no, I really want to do it. And then, fees goes aside and everything goes aside and you just get so excited by the plot and what you could do in that location that you forget everything else. So I think, business-wise, architects in general are really bad and we really need to have a business partner. Still, I don't have one and I wish I found the correct person to have as a business partner because I really don't want to get into the business of things.
And yet you've been highly successful, Sanjay. You couldn't have done that. You couldn't have had the growth you did and hire this amazing set of young architects if you didn't know the business aspect of it as well. So I think you're underplaying that particular intelligence that you have in the business acumen as well. Now, coming back to the practice itself. Now, there's so much of technology employed in architecture now. Now, so many digital tools. So when you actually hiring new recruits, are you looking for, people with passion as yourself when you came into the business and continue to have that passion? Or are you looking to hire people that have these digital skills? Because now everyone's working on the computers, there's every kind of software available. So really, how much value is it to, this whole design intelligence that's necessary or the passion that is necessary anymore? I mean, what is the percentage of relevance that you would give to creativity in a new hire?
So I think, even today, it's 80% is still you're looking for the passion in the person. And it's not about all the other skills of how well you can draw and how well you know your softwares. That still comes, for me, that still comes secondary. So I am still looking at 80%. Do you have the passion? And if that person has the passion, then you look at the other aspects. Okay, great. Presentation is also good. And, he's really good at Rhino or she's really good at something else. So, but all of that is secondary.
I completely second what you're saying, Sanjay.
Yeah, I think
one should be looking at all the other aspects as well, but I don't know, somehow you just get caught up in that whole thing that is the person passionate or not, and that overrides everything else.
Akshat, you were saying something?
I think working in an architectural practice is like continuing professional development throughout, right? That never stops. So we have these little one-liners for ourselves, and when we're interviewing people, which I don't do anymore, it's always the studio looking to see if someone fits in. And for us, the how you start is by saying, skills can be taught, because for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months, that's what you're doing, and you're doing that as you go along. But character, you either have or you don't have. So we're always looking for that. We're looking for individuals who can bring something to the studio, and that doesn't have to do with your skill set or your architectural training. It's got to do with who you are and what you really are as a personality.
But if I can just ask over here, sorry, just to kind of continue, Akshat, your sort of train of thought, that when you talk about personality, it's one thing to be passionate, like Sanjay said, right? You're looking for somebody who's passionate about the subject, about architecture itself. But today, like you're also saying, that it's important to build a structure which can allow you to propagate your business, the business of your studio and your practice. So do you look for people who have that acumen who are like over or well-rounded in that respect? Or are you looking for people who are passionate on one hand, so they're going to, run the design part of their studio, and you're looking for another set of people who are going to run the business part of the studio?
I think we are never looking for a one-dimensional person, right? Remember that each individual who's sitting in your studio is for a studio our size, we're about 25 people. So each person is is an ambassador for your studio itself, right? It's an energy, and it's a flat organization. So it's a flat outfit. It's not really an organization, unlike Gensler and possibly Sanjay, who lied about his business acumen, but but I think we're always looking for people who fit in and who contribute. Now, you're not looking at it as a business development device. At least I'm not, or the studio's not. That's not what we're geared for, and we're fortunate enough to not have to depend on it, really all the time. It's not our focus, but it is about bringing some sort of vibe of the city in and taking our vibe out. It's never the ambition when you first meet someone, but if they develop into being a potential person who can go out and look for new work or identify new avenues, then that happens over a certain amount of time in the studio itself, right? But the core first engagement of the studio with an individual is that of being a designer.
That's kind of, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, Sanjay, you have previously mentioned how because you started off your practice, and correct me if I'm wrong, you started off working with Hafiz Contractor while you were still in school, and you continued working with him. And then after that, you kind of set off on your own with a developer who offered you a particular project. And because you started off working with a developer, you kept getting more and more projects that were developer driven. And it was a little bit of a challenge for you to come out of that little pigeonhole, right, of working with developers and doing these large scale sort of development projects. Whereas you have enjoyed doing smaller and more different, perhaps more intimate projects as well. So was it like, can you tell us a little bit about this? I don't know if it was a struggle really, but for you to diversify your practice and be able to do different kinds of things in the process?
Oh, so yeah. So I actually started working with Hafiz when I was 18. I had not even joined college then. So it was prior to joining college. So I had already done working drawings, met clients, gone to sites, managed sites prior to going to college first year.
Wow.
So anyway, there's a different thing.
So you were like the perfect candidate for somebody to join an office.
He just copied Norman Foster's life.
After reading Fountainhead, I believe.
Well, he's very smart. That's a good life to copy.
So like you said, going into that, so my first project, which I started with, really a very large project. I mean, there's projects like that to start your office with. It was 3,000 apartments, 54 acres, apartments, school, everything, the works. And we were doing the entire urban planning as well. So, I mean, that was a huge break. So yes, but because of that break, the downside was that we just kept getting developer after developer after developer. There was literally a point where I was doing projects in every western suburb of Mumbai, and for every single builder who was building there. And that effort to try to get something different was just not happening because people never considered it that way. They said, "Oh, this guy is for the developer kind of architect." So it took a long time to get that first break. We did a very interesting food court in Lonavala. And then we won a competition to do a leisure center, which was just a 15,000 square feet building, but it was very, very interesting in the Ambi Valley, which is like a 3-hour drive from Bombay. And so slowly the shift happened. And then we started focusing on trying to get those jobs. So it took a long period. So we are still doing developer projects now also, but that is now only 30% of our actual work. The rest of the work, which involves schools and houses and all other kinds of buildings. So yeah, it took a long time, Mrinalini. It took a really long time. It was a struggle.
But I have to say, you're doing a lot of different works now, a lot of diverse projects now. So it's paid off, right?
Yes, it did.
You know what was very intriguing for me was listening to Smita talk about Gensler's, large. I mean, they're a large corporate today, and she said they're even coming down to designing a label. So they are a design company. From her conversation, it seems that far more a design company as an identity than an architecture firm. And she also said they hire designers and not architects. Now, it's very different from the way Akshat and Sanjay and other, Indian architecture firms work, because you actually are hiring architecture graduates with engineering degrees and so on. So, how different is the environment that you work in? How different is, how is the perception of an architecture firm in India? Akshat, and Smita, you also work out of India 6 months of the year.
So I'll just say that Gensler would be appalled if they heard that they were being called a corporate. And frankly, I have worked for a corporation and they are not corporate. They are definitely a design firm. They're made up of small studios. And it's really organic. They would be appalled. Yes, there is a framework. We call it the platform. That everybody can plug into, but they are, I guess, they are a little bit more corporate than perhaps the smaller firms. But frankly, they are primarily a design firm, and I would say a majority of the people are trained architects and interior designers. And then there are others who join as well, other adjacent fields as well. So over to Akshat.
I think what I understand is that you guys scale beyond a point, and then you bring it. There is diversity that comes in either organically or it's sort of doctored in, and it's a bit like looking at a fashion house, right? Where the chief fashion designer, there's a lot of machinery that's actually looking after the business end of that design studio, allowing the designers to be independent. So I think there was a time when one would look down upon a large scale firm or organization as, say, oh well, they're not innovative or creative enough, or or outfit like enough, or sort of hands on enough. But that's been proven wrong over the last couple of decades, clearly. And I think it was really because even in the 80s, a good studio was at the most 35 people studio. But today, when you look at a Foster and Partners or a Bjark Engels or Gensler, these guys are behemoths, and they are running delivery structures. But that doesn't just mean that they are stuck in that. Yes, you will see a lot of output, which is a certain kind, and you can say, well, it's just output. But if you look at all the smaller studios generating work, you'll see that there is that sort of similarity anyway. The space for innovation and true innovation is and true contribution through design is limited. You can sometimes just overdo it and sort of have an academic contribution of some level, which is or esoteric contribution. But I think I've grown to appreciate how large studios tend to, or large organizations and large studios tend to work. There's a lot to learn there.
What's happening is that the minute a studio goes beyond a certain scale, it's termed commercial, right? And I don't necessarily understand why. So today, the perception is that if you are a large scale studio, you're commercial. And the minute you're termed commercial, you're termed less creative. Is that something that you all feel?
Not at all. And, I would like to address that, because that is something that we face all the time, and talk about passion projects. The first time I came to Bangalore, I drove by the Opera House. It was a derelict building. It was sitting over there, completely boarded up. 10 years down the road, Samsung actually rented that building, and we had a chance to work on that. Sanjay, we made no money on it, but it was a passion project that we did in Bangalore, and it adds so much to the city. So the passion doesn't go out. Akshat, I was going to say to you, I'm so sorry that we were not there when you were looking for a outfit like ours to plug into, because we were the right place for you, because we want to harness your passion and give you all the other support to do your best work. And so, and not at all, I just don't like this idea of commercial. If commercial means that we do well by doing good, then yes, we want to be commercial. But the passion is not reduced by even an iota.
Yeah, I think we have to somehow start disassociating commercial success from poor work, right? And
Yes.
would you judge?
Exactly.
I mean, if you Google Foster and Partners, it's the #1 place to work, and it's the #1 studio, and it's the #1 studio in the architectural communities, in terms of respect. So why would you say that? Like, how can they've proven it? Like, is enough others? Richard Rogers partnership, 700 people, right? So I think we tend to sort of do that to shield ourselves, to say no, to sort of put blinkers on ourselves, in a sort of almost a socialist way. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but almost to sort of say that, hey, commercial success is not good. Commercial success means you're compromising somewhere. No, you're not. If you're using that to harness some other kind of energy, then you're definitely not, and it's a good thing. You are doing this. You are in this profession for profit, right? You're not in it as a charitable organization.
How would you define success for yourself? Sorry, Sanjay, how would you define success for yourself? Do you feel that your practice has been successful over the years?
Yes, it has been successful to an extent, but not to the extent that I wanted it to be, because there were a number of designs that we had done like 15 years ago, which never saw the light of day. I mean, seriously, they were at that time really ahead of time, but each time it was the client said, no, this is too much, or this is, they were just not convinced. So I think we lost a lot of opportunity, but that it was not that we did something to lose it. It was just that it did not happen for other reasons. So it would have been way more successful.
So Sanjay, are you equating your idea of success by the kind of design projects that you seem to be disappointed that didn't materialize? So yeah, you're equating your success to passion in that sense and not commerce, because certainly you are commercially a very successful architecture firm, but you still feel this. Now, doesn't that have something to do with the client landscape in India as well? Isn't it about raising the bar of awareness of what is good architecture, bad architecture, and respecting the architect and his creativity? Yeah. Can you elaborate a bit on that, Sanjay? Yeah.
It's got everything to do with that. People think that, okay, and I've been told this, oh, you got it easy, you got this, you got that, it's so easy for you to convince clients. It's not at all easy. The amount of time you spent convincing a client 15 years back, you're still doing it even now with every single project almost. Yeah, just those few, very few who come saying that, okay, this guy has done this and he has done that, which is so different, I'll leave it to them. But that's so rare. It's like 1 in 50, 60 maybe. But the balance 49, you still need to convince at every point, at the design time, the budget time, for getting a good contractor, for not compromising. I think in India, if you manage to construct a project the way you envisaged it in the beginning, you should get an award for that itself. Because you have to deal with a client who changes his mind. And this is like an Indian thing, They think, you can keep changing. It's okay. So what? You can keep changing. And every few months you can change, every second month you can change, and you can let's look at it. How often do you do it? You are wasting your money, don't they get it? So that's A. Then to find the correct contractor. Okay, so there are some contractors who understand, but then that client doesn't want that contractor, but maybe that contractor is expensive, or maybe that contractor is far away, or maybe he doesn't have that much manpower to do it in the same speed. So there are all these other factors. So then you have to deal with a contractor only who's not good to start with. And then make sure, because here in India, you have a contractor who thinks he knows it all also, in spite of not having done enough work or that kind. So there are these challenges at every single point here.
But Sanjay, tell me, don't you think that, with your years as a studio and with the kind of provenance you have, while I understand every time you're doing a new typology, you're up against your competition, if you're sort of in a competition or if you're pitching or some such, you have to prove your worth, or you have to prove the mettle of your ideas. But a lot of what you're saying seems to have to do with contract administration, which is like your change logs that you're talking about are your own studio's contract administration. Then when you talk about how you deal with a contractor or a third party who's actually responsible for delivering your project in a physical form, then it's about, helping a client project manage or contract administer. I feel often we tend to confuse in India, we tend to confuse, or I feel often we tend to get overburdened by certain expectations that we shouldn't have, and that clouds our ability to choose the right partners or the right people to work with.
No, Akshat, that aside, that of course is part of it. No, but the main thing is that clients yet have to be convinced to do a design that is slightly different also. I mean, they just want to do it. Oh, this is, I'm just saying a simple thing, okay, just few days back. Oh, this building got too many curves, the shuttering will be too expensive. Why don't you make a straighter design? You're not seeing what you're achieving by the design. You're achieving fluid, you're achieving spaces that flow into each other. They're not interested in that. They're only interested in how you can cut cost at all times. So it starts with the client problems first. You still have to spend so much time convincing a client to do what you want to do. Contractor.
I have a question on the building process itself. Do most architects firms bill on an hourly basis or on a project fee basis? Because if what you're saying is true, and I know it's true that clients keep changing and changing. So if you charge just a project fee, you're just losing out on your resources.
You're losing out all the time, by the way. And although there is a clause that if you repeat the design once it is frozen and you've gone to a certain stage, or if you finish the working drawing and then you change the design stage will be built again, the working drawing stage will be built again. But clients in India are just not ready to pay. They're just not ready to pay. So there are very few, to be fair, there are a few who say, okay, they accept that, okay. But that also, they'll accept that, okay, I got the design changed 4 times, I'll pay once more. It's never happens up till now in our career. It's never happened that somebody has paid for every change in it. And we have the man hours and all of that also written in the clauses, but it is never followed. No client does it.
Smita, is this something that you notice happening more in India as opposed to other parts of the world?
No, I think it's an Asia-wide issue. It's not just India. We see this. Yeah, it's Asia-wide. And I think it's a little bit more in the West, it's a little bit more structured. And I think that's probably why, because there are professionals on the client side as well. So it's not perhaps the owner himself, somebody who's doing a project for the first time. Maybe they don't understand this and they haven't factored these kind of things in. Sanjay, we've been, and that's perhaps sometimes having the heft that we do, sometimes it helps. We've been able to get some additional services for design changes. But you're right, I think it's a struggle. And believe me, it's not easy. The only thing we can do is to have a very defined process. And then you're right, they will make the changes even when the design drawings are done, and what will process do at that point? I think that's where making sure that the brief and the story, and this is where storytelling comes into all of this, that the story of the project is well established. So the changes that are being requested, you can at least challenge them to a certain extent. But you're right, this issue does exist.
You seem to have had a different sort of set of experiences.
Sorry?
So you seem to have had a different set of experiences with your clients, yeah?
Yes, I think I understand where Sanjay is coming from, and I actually agree with Smita as well. But I think I have to say that we've been lucky that way, that we have been able to have some clarity of stage or on documentation. It is very hard to build man hours in India because there is a learning curve that's happening within smaller studios all the time, and so there is no real man hour definition. there's a lot of inefficiency because we're all addicted to our mobile phones. I think a lot more than people are aware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there was a time when we would actually request everyone to leave their phones on, at the reception, and then if they received a call, the receptionist would sort of would hand the phone out or help them out with whatever communication they had to do, so that it was there, but you weren't missing out. There seems to be this. So I think that mobile phone addiction is a problem in India, but I think stage clarity is something that we have been able to achieve. It's not, and it has to do with the seriousness of the project, the clarity of the brief, of course, the clarity of the program, the critique of the program as you receive it, the understanding of the area statement as you receive it, which is a lot of those processes are shortchanged in studios in India because we're just so eager to get onto the drawing board and start throwing out something that we can innovate. We have had terrible experiences on a few projects where we wasted a lot of time just trying to prove an incorrect area statement as an ego tussle with, unfortunately, a professional on the client side. And it works both ways. I think that it has to do with a lot of contractual clarity. I have been appalled to see some 1-page, 2-page contracts that my colleagues have sort of shown to me from their studios. Say, hey, this can't possibly be a professional services agreement, so we sort of, I think I pride myself in being able to have arrived at a fair agreement that works both ways, and we really do not budge from it, unless and if it is budged from, then it's always done with lawyers consultation.
Do you think this has something to do with the scale of the project as well, and the scale of the client that you're working with, where you're not getting, if you're working with smaller projects or smaller clients, then you have direct points of contacts with them, whereas if you're working with big, I can't refrain from saying corporates, but you kind of get tangled in the bureaucracy of just the number of people who are involved in this whole process. Does that happen?
It's work culture. I think at both scales, be it a small client or a large client, it's work culture. So you could work with a very large developer and still get thrown around on your contract. It's really about. So I think clarity has to begin with you. The clarity of what service you're going to provide, how much time you're going to spend, how quickly do you want to deliver something, the time frame of a project. The need to investigate or question the brief. We're a younger studio, so much and definitely not as large as these other two sort of grades, but we do have we do try and sort of put some value and paid to our time so that we can and we do allow ourselves to get pushed around a bit for the benefit of the project. You see, architecture or in design is not a transactional relationship. It cannot be that, but it cannot be a one-way street either. And I think we often tend to not have the courage to walk away.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question on marketing. I mean, isn't marketing or shouldn't marketing be an essential part of your business or your company's, there's so many architects and architectural firms that have cropped up everywhere in India. In every city, even in tier 2, tier 3 cities, I often see architecture, practices. Now, how does one go and get these, jobs? How do you develop and nurture a client network? How do you go? And I mean, surely, all of you are working. You're working on your creativity, getting these things sorted. But don't you think it's essential to have a small marketing setup within your own organizations? And maybe you do.
So like building a brand?
Kind of, the outreach. How do you go and get a job? Until you do an amazing. Until you. Yeah, Sanjay.
A lot of architecture firms in India have marketing teams. In fact, I was shocked to hear first time when I heard it about 10 years back that this guy used to work in a bowling alley. And so I said, "Oh, you used to deal with that bowling company, right? So now where are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm working with this so-and-so architect in Bombay." So I said, "What are you working with an architect? You were a sales.
Sanjay, we seem to have lost you.
Marketing. The other day I was in Surat.
Sanjay, we're having some network issues with your connection, I think.
So there are a lot of architects doing marketing, but we have never done it and we don't have any marketing people. I think when you do a good project, that in itself gives you so many more clients.
But Sanjay, it takes a long time to get there to be recognized, you know. Until then, what? Who sells you? Who sells your talent?
Yeah, let me speak to that a little bit, because we are a large organization and we are a big beast. It has to be fed. But I completely agree with Sanjay. We don't have, we see a lot of architects having business development individuals on the team. And even with our big behemoths, we do not have business development individuals. So for the practitioners, yes, talk to clients. Yes, we are performing that function. But your best business development technique is your previous project. It's built, it's standing there. So 80% of our business is repeat business. If we do right by our clients the last time, they will come back to us. The second step that we take great pride in the work we do, and we make sure that the work is done right. Not that, we don't have bad projects, everybody does now and then, but our focus is to get the job done right. The second piece is to get thought leadership out there. So what we are thinking, how we in forums like this and others, we get our thinking out there. And then, but when the RFP does come in, there is a mechanics of responding to all that. So for that, we do have marketing groups, but we do not have a business development group. And if we are able to do that at 5,500 people, the largest firm in terms of people and revenue, then I know that it's not necessary to focus that much on marketing and business development. Just do your job right.
Akshat, would you like to add to that?
Thinks.
Well, I read somewhere that if you do something, you need to talk about it. And I think there's a lot of noise, especially in India now with publication, right? So there's a lot of that going on. I have to say that I think I agree with Smita again that your work and the personnel in your organization are your business development team, right? Both are actually torchbearers for what you do. And you need to often get thought leadership out there, which is what, I guess now social media and publication does. Unfortunately, publication in India is not critical. It's only focused on product or project delivery. And it's descriptive or celebratory. It's not critical. So it's one-dimensional, and I think clients understand that as well. I, for one, we don't have a business development team, and I, for one, am an introvert, so I don't network. I take solace in sort of going back and sitting amongst my instruments and playing them, rather than going out and partying or meeting other individuals. But yes, I think most of the very successful practices out there have very, very aggressive business development teams. And I do believe that in India, that is appreciated by clients, right? So it's who you are, and it's what you are and who you know here to a large extent. So I think if they are a force multiplier, because they are screaming out your message out, at least the message of getting more business or your availability out there.
It's not only publications and not only PR firms, right? But various platforms like Smita, you mentioned, even media opportunities and speaking opportunities, such as this, for example. This could become an opportunity for each one of you. Also awards and competitions, attending different things, whether it's pan-India, whether it's international, just being visible creates that brand awareness, right? Now, it's a question of whether you want to create that as an individual or do you want to create that as a company? And I think it might work differently in both cases. So Sanjay, for example, your firm is pivoted on your name and on a person, right? Whereas Gensler, on the other hand, is a much larger sort of conglomeration, which is, multiple people. And so it's not about knowing that one person who started it, but as knowing Gensler as a brand. And Akshat, you're kind of sitting maybe, if I can say so, in the middle of the two ends of the spectrum. So Sanjay, would you like to comment on that?
So no, you're absolutely right.
But your bio does sort of, say that you've gotten what, more than 250 awards across the world. So that definitely says for something, right?
Yes. So that in itself is, being out there. But neither do we have marketing, and I think it's a project that gets you more projects. It happens with almost all projects. You do one good project and it actually multiplies and gives you, at the very least, 5, 6 more.
Yeah, but I have to say, Sanjay, I think, sorry.
No, go ahead, Akshat.
I think you and Hafiz Contractor and a couple of others are kind of phenomenons, they're in India. You have been around for, you're like, your forces to reckon with in terms of your visibility and the number of projects you do and the diversity of projects you guys do. No one can question it. So I don't think it, like Gensler, I don't think you really need to tell the world that you're there because everybody knows you're around.
Come on, see, we are not that big, okay? You guys are making it sound like God knows what. They're like 70 people. They're not that many big. I mean, you're comparing to Hafiz, who's got like 500 plus people. So it's not like that. And we are not doing some crazy amount of work. We're just doing the kind of work that we can handle and we can take care of, and it follows the principles of attention given to detail, because you don't want to get that big that you don't know what is happening in the office. So we've kept it that way.
So it's a conscious decision to not grow more than this?
Yeah, it is actually a conscious decision so far.
And at what point do you figure that, okay, I want my studio to be this size and I want my practice to do only this kind of work? So, especially for a lot of people who are starting their own studios and practices now, it's interesting to see, because you might start off saying that, okay, let me do whatever comes my way, right? Because that's how you're going to you set the ball rolling. But at what point are you able to define your own values for your own practice? At what point did you say, okay, this is what it's going to be?
I think that understanding will come on its own. So in the beginning, like in our case, we just took every single thing that came. Okay, literally every single thing. But now it's like, no, you don't want to do that kind of thing. You don't want to do this whole developer thing. And if the project has merit, excitement, then you do it. So you push to only get those kind of jobs, and the other ones you don't show so much interest in. So you've gradually done that whole shift. So you will realize yourself that there is this point that, okay, there's enough of doing everything, because you cannot make a difference everywhere. Like, let's be fair, you cannot in a standard developer project really make a difference, especially in Bombay with the kind of rules that there are. Okay, so you can only just make it kind of okay and nice. You can't do something that is wow, because the rules don't permit you to do, and the other conditions also don't permit you to do. So you don't want to do that anymore. So that the understanding comes, it'll come.
I want Akshat and Smita to respond to this, and I want to come back to this whole idea of catering and addressing the market versus doing what you actually want to do on your own. But Smita and Akshat, if you want to comment on what we talked about earlier.
Akshat, you want to go first? Because I have a big answer here. We've gotten to 5,500. We're taking a slightly different approach, though all the constraints are the same. Yes, go ahead, Akshat.
I think, I would respectfully disagree with Sanjay there. I think we all have to define for ourselves what we mean by differentiator and what is significantly different enough to be a wow. B, I think at least we like to believe that our work is rooted in being critical of the program and the typology in itself, and take it on if you can be a differentiator, if you can contribute to being a differentiator in it. Only that way will there be a repeat for you, right? Here I'm not talking about the mechanism for delivery, because the mechanism for delivery has to be infallible, right? You have to do that. You have to deliver. It is the understanding of a project from conception to completion is, it goes without saying. And the conception has to be that of a differentiator if you want to be heard, otherwise you're not going to be heard. Otherwise, you just need like a lot of numbers to just start coming your way. And that happens everywhere in the world. You have the numbers, there will be enough followers who will just sort of follow you. It's kind of like a conformist client or whatnot who will sort of follow you in that way. So the only way we've been able to sort of make a mark for ourselves is by being, distinctly different. And that's not different for the sake of being different. It's actually just making a critical contribution to the project. And you can see that from our client our client profile as well. I mean, they will not, you really do have to go out and prove on paper and demonstrate that, what your, that differentiator is different, because those clients and those project typologies already have a successful provenance.
But Akshat, do you feel that you started off in a certain way and therefore your trajectory has been like this? Or did you work towards making it so specifically defined?
I think we were always like that. I think one of the core principles of the studio was critical intimacy. It was never critical difference. So it started like that. It was always about the space in between buildings more than the building in itself. I mean, that has to happen. You have to get your building right like a product, or your interior right like a product. What did happen as we went along was we started doing a lot of interior work, because I think architectural endeavors take fairly long, right? Any significant one will be 3 to 5 years, and sometimes they fall through the cracks. And suddenly, so in the first 7 years, we had only 3 projects built to show, but we worked on 20, and they just fallen through the cracks. There was a recession and whatnot. And we realized we had to start embracing interior work, because that would give us opportunity to test things very quickly, and also hone our skills, and make a network of projects that were good enough to show to people, to say that we have delivered a certain scale, volume, and quality of work.
Yeah, so let me take that on. And I think for me, the answer is in both places. We've grown organically. So we didn't start out. If you ask Art today, which, he comes to the office still, he's 85 years old. He comes to the office every day, and you will run into him if you are in the San Francisco office. So if anybody's coming, please let me know and I'll make sure you meet him. He didn't, where we've ended up is not what he envisioned. So the difference is it's the passion and the differentiator of a lot of individuals. So for instance, absolutely, there is passion involved on what you're able to do with your client. So we embraced always we embraced our clients' thinking and trying to solve the issue for them. Not that we did not question the brief. We expanded the brief, we made it so we solved problems that the client doesn't know that they have, or issues we put a different light on a perspective, and that is part of the joy of what we are able to bring to the table. But suppose I was passionate about consulting and strategy, so I have been able to grow that business. Then there was somebody who was passionate about data centers, so we do data centers, completely different thing. So this issue, I think what Sanjay's it's basically our firm is a bunch of Sanjay studios, and there are a lot of people. They're not nearly as famous as Sanjay. We call ourselves the constellation of stars. So we don't have one sun, but we have a lot of stars who built studios around them, around their passions, and all of them are thinking the same way. They want to do something similar, and we can just band together and increase the scale of our work and the scale of the impact. And really, that's how it's built. So we find that a studio of about 35 is at the maximum. As soon as a group gets to be about 35 and 40 around an idea or an issue or a practice, we usually break it up into 2 studios, and then they start to grow again. And that's exactly how the firm has grown, on people's passions and also client relationships. So for instance, if Chevron takes us to Houston, we go to Houston, and then we start a business there. And that's sort of been our practice. And that's how we came to India as well.
Smita, you've thrown up something very interesting here. So are you saying to all of us that you're a conglomerator of smaller studios that work independently? For instance, would you then take over Akshat's practice or Sanjay's practice? Not take over, but make them partners with Gensler to work out of India or work elsewhere? And is that how you've grown? So you are growing with other independent studios?
No, so we've never taken over a studio. We do not acquire. Zero M&A activity for Gensler. We find it doesn't work. Not that we haven't tried. It just doesn't work for us. It's a very simple philosophy, but it is made up of studios, and each studio is its own and in fact, every project is a P&L. So it's a team that can be made up of the best individuals from around the firm. We have that ability to attract the right people to make up a project, but they reside in a home room which is called the studio, and the project also belongs in a studio. So that's one unit of organization, and several studios make an office, and several offices make a region. So this is just a way of organizing ourselves, just so that there is some level of communication and just operational efficiency. But I'm just trying to. I would love if Akshat wants to join a Gensler, then certainly we'll have a way to do it. But it's under the Gensler umbrella, and the most important thing for us is the Gensler culture, which absolutely transcends everything else. It's a one firm in the true sense that we put the firm or the benefit of the entire firm to get, as much as the individual. It's employee owned. So all the profits are not going up to one person. Most of the 90% of the profits go back to employees. And in these times right now, we are going through some tough times financially. So the people who are taken care of best are the most junior people. The principals are the ones which is about, I would say, 7%, 6% of the firm. We have taken the biggest cut, but we take care of our people. They have shares in the firm. So it really is a collective rather than a conglomerate. I would say it's a collective, that everybody comes into this platform, works together, and sort of builds on each other's power.
Thank you.
So I think I just want to come back to what Sanjay was talking about, what he mentioned a little earlier. I know we're running way beyond time, and Sanjay has another commitment. So we're going to quickly ask you about this whole idea of responding to the market, what you were talking about earlier, right? And whether we should or whether we do this as a response to what is a requirement of the market versus what we want to do. And I know a lot of times you kind of get caught in between this, it becomes like a conundrum of what we should do versus what we want to do, what is a requirement versus what is a desire, and how we draw that balance between the two. And Sanjay, if we can get your thoughts on that, and we will spare you for the rest of the evening.
No, I think you got me wrong in that last one. So it's not about doing what the market expects you to do ever. You never do what the market expects you to do. You do what you think is appropriate for that kind of thing. Yeah, some projects will be market driven. For example, everything is not an individual project, and it's not a corporate project, and it's not an education project. So there are private developers projects, but 90% of the architecture that happens in India, unfortunately, is that. But so given that there is a market condition for that particular plot in that part of the city, and there is a requirement for that, but you have to do whatever is possible in the best possible manner there. So is it such that if every good architect starts shunning all these developers, the developers will end up going to architects who are totally, which means that everybody will be living in a not so greatly designed apartment for the rest of their lives. You don't want to do that, right? So yes, so there are projects where you may not make an architectural wonder. Okay, that is what I was trying to say. But that does not mean that you can't make it better. You have to make it better. So under all those circumstances of what the market desires, what the developer wants, you have to find a medial path and create the best kind of design solution that is possible on that particular plot for that particular location, considering the clientele that is going to come and live there. There is always something that you can do better. So we can't shun, right?
And also the projects that are coming your way are determined by the market, right? I mean, there is a market for certain development, and that's what is going to be available and that is what is going to be offered to you. It's interesting that you put it, you said something which almost seems like you're shouldering the responsibility of creating responsible architecture, because if you don't respond to it, then these projects would go to people who perhaps would not be able to do justice to them.
Absolutely. Do you know?
And we all do. I agree with Sanjay. We all do. We should take this on. It's our job.
In the last 7-8 years, how many residential towers have been created in Bombay where kitchens don't get natural light and ventilation? Bathrooms are opening into 2 feet by 5 feet plumbing ducts. They have no natural ventilation. Do you think that works in India?
No.
Why? Why would you do that? Why would you make a curtain wall residential building where you can't open the window beyond 6 inches? I mean, that's stupid to another level here. So this is what is happening everywhere in premium projects, in expensive apartments. If architects like us do not get involved, then that's what's going to happen. I mean, like blind aping of what's happening in the West in buildings which are not suited for the climate here.
So it's refreshing to know that you're also, the onus is being taken by the professional as well, right? It's not only by saying, you can't like shrug off responsibility and say that, oh, it's not coming to me, or this is what is required of me. But there is a sense of wanting to expand on the awareness, whether it's with the client or the marketplace or the audience. So it's not only about the creator and the consumer, but it's also about the spectator in between.
Exactly.
So Sanjay,
I'm going to ask you, Mrinal, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm getting comments after comments on social media saying, why is Sanjay not expanding internationally? And why are you only stuck in India?
So we had a lot of opportunities, but like you said, so you were saying, right, success and whatever. So we had a project and slabs of the first building. It was a very interesting project, complete sea view, sitting on a site which was the first time we had a site which had an 80-degree slope. It was insane. It was literally like building against a wall. And all those complicated designs we did, project started, some investor backed out, and project stopped. In Dallas, we were about to start a project, everything done, contractor in place, permissions, and then the landlord had some problem and the project stalled. So yeah, there is bad luck.
Well, we wish you luck, and we hope that we can see you expand and, take over the world little by little. But I know that you have to run. So if everyone else is okay with it, we can take some more questions and carry on the conversation. And Sanjay, we can excuse you to have a more exciting Saturday night. If you can spare some more time and stick around with us, of course, we'd love that.
No, I have to go. It's a function.
Sure. But thank you so much for being here today. And we really hope to see a lot more of you, and we will catch you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay.
Great. Nice to
meet you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hope to do this in person.
Yes, soon. Bye, Akshat. Bye, Rajshree.
Bye, Sanjay. Thank you so much.
See you. So Rajshree and I, that's what we were discussing. That's the only thing that has been rather unfortunate about this whole thing, is that we can't actually sit in a room with a glass of wine in our hands and have this conversation.
Yeah,
we are locked behind digital screens instead.
Of course, Rajshree, sort of case studies through documentation or case studies through physical experiences are more than encouraged. They're actually mandatory. You can't design a 5-star hotel without knowing what is expected of you, right?
Yeah.
So you can't. So I think there is this the thing is that over the last 20 years, the performance criteria in architecture has gone up significantly. So we can't be and for the kind of clients that we're engaging with now, it's not random esoteric thoughts that you can have. I mean, those are encouraged, but you do need to know how things have to perform, how things have to work. So there isn't too much room for error, right? There is tremendous room for experimentation, but that experimentation and prototyping happens on the drawing board, within a workshop, through a 3D printed model, through a physical model, or any such thing, through simulation software, but and even through a basic diagram or a drawing and your thought process. But it's on a lower performance scale that you can afford to not have experience. But if I was to say today, I mean, we're fortunate enough, we're doing a lot of public work for a community of people, or a lot of communities that actually can't afford us unless the government hires us, or unless it is through a community engagement. Even there, the performance criteria may not be as precise as that of a very fancy hotel, or a wealthy person's home, but it's a performance criteria now that has to say every 10 rupees matters on this project, because it has to be stretched for the next 25 years, and it has to perform, because this person will not have the ability to maintain it in the same manner as someone else. So there are different levels of that, right? And you can't afford to let the ball to drop the ball in a big way. And I think that's actually where I accept what Sanjay and Smita both said, that if you don't do it, if you don't stick your neck out and do it yourself, someone else is going to do it badly, right? And we see those examples around us all the time. It's actually when we realized that we were performing well at the highest level, that we said, okay, can we be a bit like Robin Hood and start giving back to the masses, right? Because nobody starts out saying, oh, I want to make the fanciest rich home, or I want to make the fanciest 5-star hotel. You start out with saying, you want to do work for regular people that you can relate to yourself.
Yeah.
And then and it's never meant, I mean, the entire organizational structure, that of a contract, that of a financial arrangement and all, is just to supplement good architecture and the ability to run the studio. We also, whenever we can, encourage sort of CPDs. We'll send someone out, be it abroad, be it out of station or whatnot, to do a short program, do a short course, do a short sort of experience. It's a way of giving back that is more, I mean, sort of thanking someone who's a few people, or a person who's worked in the studio long enough or worked well. And it's never seen as, it's not a contracted thing. I know that often people say, well, it's a contract, you go study and we sponsor your study and you come back and you work with us. No, none of that. Just, hey, you've done a good job, we can always give you a check as a bonus, but let's just try and think about you for a while.
It's also an incentive, right?
It's an incentive to experience and grow. I mean, I believe I've been fortunate.
Incentive for growth, yes.
Which
is important.
Yes. I mean, I believe I've been fortunate, and I would like to pass that on. Right? It's not whatever we are, and I mean, we're happy to be where we are after 12, 13 years of.
And I mean, value added the life of an individual in their career path, and I think that's amazing in itself. And I mean, at the end of it all, they are the assets of your practice.
So, and you have to nurture those assets. And in fact, in lines of this, we got another question from social media, which talks about, what is the importance of qualifications when you're hiring people? So, of course, you're looking at passion and you're looking at their potential in terms of their personality. But are you going for somebody who's going to be highly qualified in terms of certification? Or is that something that, you're willing to sort of negotiate with them during their time working with you? Or is there like a hard, fast rule? What is that? And I'm sure it'll be different. It's different, based on in context and based on the location that you're in as well. So if you could comment on those.
There are certain basics. There is no question when you see certain qualifications, because behind qualifications is an assumption of basic competence. I think that's what you're looking at. And that's why we seldom hire just on a resume. You look at the portfolio and you see the arc of development. And then for us, culture is absolutely everything, because we are a team sport player. If a person is collaborative, plus we can see the fire in their belly to do more and better, that's who we hire. I think Sanjay said that and Akshat said that tools can be taught. It's the attitude that cannot be taught. And you gotta hire for the right attitude. Qualifications, so this is my own personal experience. We've hired great architects, and I worked with architects or people who've trained at Harvard, and I have trained with people who don't even have an architectural degree. And many times a person who doesn't have the architecture degree in a particular area is far better than the person who went to Harvard. And this is my own personal experience. So I take the qualifications on a piece of paper with a pinch of salt. All the other things have to be there. But you are looking for some basic competence, and I guess the qualifications apply only for that. Just
Sure.
To let you know, one of our best site people is not even an architect, but I would stake my life on him. But he came with a referral, and he's, through our experience, he's proved himself. So yes, now it doesn't matter.
And I think
Well,
that's more true
interesting.
now than
Yeah,
ever because,
yeah.
Lines are kind of blurring and things are
Blurring,
getting a lot more fluid.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Rajshree is not a designer or an architect. She's not
Yeah.
professionally from this field, but it's because of her sort of
Passion.
interest and passion
Yeah,
that
she's
she
developed this.
continues to propagate and, encourage people in this field. And on the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, I'm a trained architect, but I'm not practicing anymore. And it's so we kind of, we kind of find our own ways, and sometimes we discover, sometimes we don't find it and we continue to discover. But it's becoming more and more possible to do these things now because, people are becoming more accepting of it as well.
Also,
Yes.
Mrinalini, I think we'll have to tell the audience here and Akshat and Smita that the next conversation we're having on IDF architecture debate is on professional training versus education. And this is precisely what you mentioned. Thank you for bringing it up. And, they're all important. Sometimes one more than the other, as you've experienced. So tune in for the next session as well.
Yeah, I think if you guys will permit, then we have a couple more questions to pick up. If you're not tight on time, Akshat and Smita.
Yeah, sure, go on.
I can say.
Okay, so I'm not sure who this question is aimed towards, but Soumya Jain on social media is asking that I agree that your past projects are your biggest business development tools, but what do you do if your firm is fighting misconceptions? I'm not sure what these, so in brackets, she says commercial, expensive, or international.
That's us.
So I'll let you take that.
So I'll start with that. I think you have to show up, you have to talk. And for us, the people who go for the quote unquote pitch or for that initial meeting are the people who are going to stay with the project throughout. And you have to see if you can connect as people. Because in the end, people will be working on the project. There is no company that's going to come and work on the project. That's what you do. And if you can make that personal connect beyond that, because we are all of that. We are international, we are commercial, that label, and we're expensive, but we know that we can deliver the right solution. So I think that's what you try and do.
Okay, thank you. Akshay, do you want to add to that? Commercial, expensive, international.
I actually I didn't understand the question, but I think if the question is how can you break the shackles and sort of and move in a different direction or such, then yes, you can. You started out from nothing and you are somewhere, and then if you need to change direction, or then you basically have to go back. You don't have to go back to zero or square one, but you have to just take a step back and say, well, this is the paradigm that I succeeded in, and I would like to now diversify. And that's a it's an attitudinal thing more than a commercial expectation. You could go to the extent of doing a project for free, if you have to demonstrate your ability to do so. And that's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just creating provenance for yourself.
It's interesting. I think Sanjay also talked about this, and he's actually mentioned this in some of his previous interviews, where he says that he had to move away from this whole development sort of pigeonhole that he got caught in. And he had to redefine his practice to be doing a lot of other diverse works. And it's interesting that you bring in this idea of doing free work, because we have another question from Vibhuti Katpalia, who says that what is the situation of pro bono work for government in India? Do architects prefer it? If yes, then why? And is it easy working with the Indian government?
I have never tough time working with the Indian government.
Yeah, Akshat,
but you're not allowed to do pro bono work. Sorry.
Yeah, I personally was very keen on contributing to the railway design piece, and willing to do pro bono because we never win on a fee proposal. To a certain extent, we were willing to do pro bono, but you're right, there was no avenue to do that.
I also remember that you have to have, I mean, A, when you're doing pro bono work, is it an unfair trade practice? I think that's a conversation that one should have. Like, is it an unfair trade practice? And so you can do subsidized work, right? If subsidized work is given to, is being done by a professional organization or individual that is qualified and capable and will do the best is the best person for the job, then there's nothing wrong with it. I think the issue of, the issue becomes murkier when the project goes to someone who is not necessarily the best person for the job. Right?
But isn't that subjective? Who's to decide whether a person is
Listen,
appropriate or not?
Unfortunately, now there is a very clear technical definition, right? You have to, if I wanted to work for, say, the railways, or if I wanted the parliament project, I have to have the wherewithal to guarantee that I can deliver it, right? You're gonna have to give your
guarantee. That's just logistics, no, Akshat?
Yes.
That is yours. You're still addressing just the logistic part of it, saying that, okay, you are a firm with X number of people, you have the capability of doing X number of, work in X number of time. But do you have the ability to deliver, an ability of thought and practice to deliver what is required of the project? Isn't that the subjective part of it?
Well, look, you have the capability. That's how you have the provenance. That's how you've done it all these years. That's why you've got there. That's why you've got to a point where you could do it.
Yeah, the ability, the quality, I think you're addressing the qualitative nature of that. And that is all, that it can be subjective, certainly. But the basics have to be met, which is what Akshat is saying. Your provenance is your capability, that you've been able to do it. And then after that, it is subjective. And what are you going to do about that? It is subjective. Somebody, a government official may see, oh yeah, somebody was able to make the four walls stand up and it's functioning, and that may be adequate. They may not see the added value of good design, etc.
Also, I think, may I add, that the public tendering process in India, which is the lowest bidder norm for government contracts, I think that kind of is a bit of a stumbling block for really good work to be executed. I know Niti Aayog is trying to change that whole norm. I'm not quite updated on what exactly they've been able to achieve so far. Wouldn't you agree, Akshat? That is a bit of a limiting factor.
He's on mute.
Yeah.
He's on mute if somebody can unmute him. Recently, Rajshree, I've seen some things with 70% technical marks and 30% commercial marks.
Okay.
Which helps that firms like us still don't qualify, but I think that's a move in the right direction. Then it's not, everything is not based on the lowest bidder.
I think that changed a while ago. It's not just the lowest bidder. It's but there has to be a technical provenance for you to get a project. So while it may sort of feel like you're trampling on a lot of ambition, it's not just in India. I mean, I take you back to the Reichstag project that Norman Foster finally did the dome for. Yeah. But it was rumored that Calatrava was the one who won the competition, right? It was Sanjay Calatrava. But and then it goes on to, and if you were to sort of draw that analogy, and I know I'm being politically incorrect here, but when you look at what how delayed and how over budget Sanjay Calatrava's project for the underground station at Ground Zero was at New York, then it just goes to prove a point. So the same applies for, there was a rumor that it was a student from the Architecture Association that designed the dome, the vaulted roof over the British Museum Library, but it actually went to Foster and Partners that time. And Foster Partners actually sort of revived themselves because they suddenly won 2-3 prestigious commissions then. But and that brings me to the point that a studio has to deliver. Right. Yeah, today, your architectural endeavors are far too, too delicate and too prestigious and too significant to be entrusted onto a system or a studio that has not proven themselves. It may sound wrong, but it's unfortunately the truth. It is too expensive. It's too precious. Our cities are important, and while they may find a way to sort of get collaboration. Like if you look at, say, the Nalanda project or any such, you will see that there are studios that have proven themselves internationally, collaborating with studios that are from India to do a certain typology of work. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Oh,
again, I think the architecture is, one of those fabulous things that has to function. So it has to be built, it has to not leak. Sorry, I will not hire Peter Eisenman. I'm sorry. This should not, I'm sorry, I'm on social media, but his buildings leak. So, you have to partner with the person who's going to make sure that this thing stands up.
It has to first emote, and then it has to perform. And you can't just stop at emoting, right? You have to make it perform.
It can't be just
Um,
about that. Yeah.
so I'm going to go on to a couple of fascinating questions. We actually have people who are, Smita, you open the floodgates, because now we've got people who are actually requesting for jobs and are literally sending their portfolios into us on chat over here on Zoom. So I'm going to refrain from that for now. But I would like to ask Akshat sir, what your perspective for students while creating concept and vision for their thesis projects would be. Can you give us some tips on doing a portfolio? What actually do firms expect? This is Madan from Insta. So, well, now you'll just be talking about how to apply to each of your firms.
be yourself.
Yeah,
Be concise and be yourself. That's it.
and go beyond the surface. That's what I would say. What really interests you, pick something that really interests you. Don't ask that question, what do firms expect of you? Firms expect all of you, your authentic self,
And each
and
one
we
of
can
us
see
offers
it.
something different.
Yeah,
Right? So it's
absolutely.
not about being a cookie cutter sort of template.
Right.
So I'm sorry, but Amit has written something to
Yes.
me, a comment to say that at Akshat, that would not encourage newness and encourage a continuation of established firms only, which I think he's referring to my previous conversation. Look, understand that I think it's not about architecture is not about only newness, right? Like I said, it has to first emote and then perform. we've we are not at a point where architecture can only emote, and I mean, or you emote over a few pieces of paper and a model and not deliver. So you have to tie up with a delivery mechanism. The reason why our cities are in shambles is because they have not. I'm not saying I cannot absolve my predecessors or larger firms in India or across the world of having missed an opportunity. Of course they have, but that doesn't mean and that doesn't mean we continue that. There is always going to be a quest for good architecture and good design, good delivery systems, and we have to continually improve. That doesn't mean that it's only new studios that can do good work or new studios that can reinvent themselves. There was someone who asked us a question for reinvention just a short while ago. Go into the history of studios such as, well, hey, look at Richard Rogers' partnership pre the Welsh Assembly and look at them now. Right? Like look at Richard Rogers' partnership as just that, and then look at Rogers Turk Harbor. Right? Look at the history of the studio. So it's not like established studios cannot evolve and do something significantly different. They do. It's just that when they're delivering things that are not broken, they're not sort of completely trashing them out. They're just waiting on something else to happen. That's research.
And frankly, newness for the sake of newness, I've never,
Is yeah.
the plazas in our old cities are fabulous. If we cannot do it better than that, then let's stick with that. So
Yeah.
newness for the sake of newness doesn't make any sense to me. We were having this conversation internally about the future of cities, and we're doing a bunch of research and putting some ideas together. And we realized that this future of the future city may look very much like the city of the past, because
Yeah.
there were some things that worked so well, and in the sake or in the pursuit for newness, sometimes we lost that, and we need to reclaim that.
Well,
I
also,
also have to say, I
Smita,
think
go ahead, Akshat. Sorry.
I also think that when we look at architectural endeavors in the public realm, then there is a lot of responsibility. I mean, it's fine to engage. It's probably okay to engage at smaller scale or with individual or even smaller organizations or organization of any scale when it's not public money. But the moment you are engaging in the public realm, there is a weight to that engagement, because now public space has to it's not okay for public space to last only 10 years. Public space has to perform for 50 years, 100 years. Those are the ones that you and us embrace. Those are the ones that we remember, right? If you look at Central Vista or Central Delhi now, it's 100 years old. It survived that time. There was a certain, and they were, at the time that Lutyens and Baker were delivering that, Charles N.A. McIntosh was doing the Macintosh school, right? Like, look at what was really happening. Like, Corbusier was just about getting into doing the first domino, right? So look at that, there is that shift, but it was interesting because it has to survive. I think it's few and far between that you will see young, like absolutely fresh out people deliver. And by the way, the international sort of standard, and we were having this conversation earlier, for a young architect is 45 years, right? You need to have graduated and have done something for a certain amount of years, and then you're still young at 45. Right. So I'm still young. Still young.
I like how
you're a baby.
Your by the way, your standards have gone from 40 to 45 within a span of an hour.
Internationally it's 45. In India, it's 35.
So by India standards, you're old and you're done with.
No, it's, well, whatever the standards are that established by publication, right? I think we were having that conversation earlier also about publication and awards and whatnot. But I forgot to say that there was a time when there were only so few, and today there are so many.
Yeah.
And and so how do you pick? And well, anyway, that's a conversation another day.
We actually have a lot of younger sort of audience that are coming out of school and are wanting to establish their own practices. So we're getting a lot of comments and questions from them. And someone asks about this whole idea of innovation, right? Where, especially as a new architect or a new professional, you feel the pressure to innovate, to prove yourself. And by innovate, you more often than not are talking about an original idea, or again, coming back to the idea of doing something new. So how do you overcome that? And how do you, again, when you're starting off on your own, did you go through this process where you had to pick projects that were coming your way so that you could earn the money to sustain your practice, and then sort of do works on the other end that were not necessarily paying, but would sort of satiate or indulge, or you would be able to indulge in your curiosities? Smita, go ahead.
Well, I didn't go that route. So for me, it was very important to build a foundation. And since I was trained here, I didn't have that opportunity to go out and put my placard out there. Not that I was tempted to do that. Here we finish school in the US, and then we have to go through the registration, architectural registration, which takes, there's a period of apprenticeship, which I completely believed in. And by the time I, went through that period, I found that I'm much better as a part of a collective. And, once I found a sort of a spiritual home, I did not have this temptation to put Smita Gupta Architect out there, because I felt I can do it as part of the firms that I was participating. I was learning so much that I did not have that temptation. And to this day, now I could, but I don't have that temptation, because I think what I can contribute, I do much better as part of a team than as me individually. And if I can bring all my ideas to that, and they shape the project in the right way, only the good ones will survive. So the best ideas can come from many different places. It takes professionals and experienced professionals to pluck the right idea and put it in the right place in the right proportion. And that's why Akshat's right. At 45 years, or with that much experience behind you, that's when you know what is a good idea. Because newness for newness sake, I just said, is an innovation. If it is not really making something better, it's just it's a folly. It's an architectural folly. So Akshat, I think you've been down this road, so you can maybe answer it more directly.
Look, I think I had the good fortune of working for a few very, very good architects at a young age. So I first worked with Pranay and Prasad. Then I worked with, and I had zero experience of a studio before I went abroad. So I never did the 1 month internships or sort of trips to architecture studios. I was sort of, because that 1 month I'd rather spend sort of playing the guitar. And I actually encourage people to that, like travel, experience the world, experience your country. You don't have to just be a one-trick pony, sort of stick in there and sort of learn some new architectural skill. I think that just sort of destroys it all. The second is, I think don't succumb to some sort of financial pressure, because trust me, the entrepreneur journey is not a pleasant one, and it's fraught with danger. So you'd much rather have that safe but lower earning architect's job, which is at least teaching you, right? So therein it becomes important to choose the studios that you want to work with and be sort of dogged about it and be committed. So you have to sort of spend at least 3 to 5 years to sort of understand studios, and you need to go through a couple of scales of work over a few years, and a significant number of years before you really have a voice, right? A significant enough voice. If you even look at Corbusier's earlier works and go back in the book, see what he was doing for the first 15 years of his life. It was just copying what was already, or just repeating it was repetition. It was learning through repetition. So, and that's also the old saying, right? A good copy is better than a bad invention, right? So you go down that path. And finally, for me, because I had worked with Pradhan Prasad and then with Jeff, and then finally when I came to India, I was for a very short, brief period of time, actually just about 2 months, I tried a commercial firm that's called Morphogenesis, which I didn't think I fit in. And then I started working with Viren, which was about 4 years. So I think I cut my teeth. I cut my professional teeth with Viren, and he was my guinea pig, or I was his guinea pig, whatever. We still debate that. But I was a reluctant starter, right? And that's why it's not, Atelier Akshat Bhatt or whatever. That's why it's architecture discipline, because I always wanted the studio to be beyond me. Which, by the way, I can happily say over the last year or so, whenever I've gone out, people have heard of the studio, but they haven't heard of me. And I have to say, but I found, so I've sort of used the studio name and the provenance for myself. I founded it, which is nice to have got to a certain point with. But I would really, really resist and discourage people from starting out on their own early on. Start out when you've sort of learned it, when you're critical enough with your contribution. And do not innovate. I mean, we really, really resist innovation. We want to, it's just for the sake of it, right? We are critical of what a program is doing. We're critical of what a typology or a morphology is doing to try and make it achieve more. But you have to first understand what it's achieving before you can make it achieve more, right? If you don't understand it, then how can you do it? And that's why case studies are important. But you can't just do it through case studies, because you don't know what that wall section is. You don't know how it's going to perform. Unfortunately in India, we pay very little importance to the physics of building.
Yes.
Right? Building physics as a science, you need to know it. And unless you know that, you can't deliver it. It's not just about fancy shapes and expensive material. Architecture is about a lot more than that. It has to move the human spirit, but it also has to give you health and safety.
Yeah, it's interesting, because now with the technological tools, we feel that we can design anything. You get into a computer and you can go into that maze. You can build anything on in the virtual world, but that is not architecture. You can do that for gaming organization if that's your predilection. Become a game designer, or do the graphics for them. For architecture, it has to be at the right scale. How does the human body, how does the human spirit react to this built thing? It's really important. Akshat, I could not agree more. Do not innovate. Do not start your own practice unless that's the only thing that you can do. Artists say that they are doing what they're doing because they just can't conceive of anything else. There's so much inside them that just comes out. And that's exactly when you should start your own practice and give yourself at least 5 years to learn the basics and have somebody good teach you. I think the US model of doing the registration and going through that apprenticeship model is a really good one, and perhaps India should consider that. because really you're not an architect when you come out of school. You're barely ready to become an architect.
Agreed. And if I could just add to what Akshat and Smita were saying, is that it's important to experiment and work in different environments, and not only to necessarily understand what you want to do, but it sometimes also helps you understand what you don't want to do. And I think that becomes critical as well. You might want to work in different, and it could be something as, um, as small as how big an office do you want to be a part of? Do you want to be a part of a Gensler, or do you want to be a part of an architecture discipline? Because they're two very different work environments. Do you want to do residential work, or do you want to do other kinds of work? Everyone's doing different works with different ethics and different values. And the more you experiment, and I'm not saying, hop from job to job, give yourselves that kind of opportunity and the time that it requires to assimilate into a space. But experiment, and what better than to do it at somebody else's cost and time, right?
Look, here in
Absolutely.
our studio, it takes about 6 months to learn how to draw and how to work on our server systems, right? I mean, to really sort of get conversant with it, including including how to send communication out to a site or to a client, how to check your own drawing before you actually plot them out and have somebody else check them. There is a lot of responsibility. I think people don't understand or undermine the need for insurances, for professional liabilities, etc. It's coming into place now in India. It's becoming mandatory. And like I said, innovation for the sake of it. I remember I actually made a trip to a big city in India, because I had read and heard so much about a few parametrically just sort of done projects. It really interested me. And of course, the 3D models and the aesthetic of the project is just so striking. So I said, well, okay, this city's got 3. Let me go see. So I actually went. I took 4 days out, went to see these, and I came back and asked my thesis tutor, who I still speak to. I said, I don't know. It just felt like a glorified shed. What was it? And that's when he started explaining to me that, look, you must understand that it's just someone's taken a very simple thing and simple objective and complicated it. And architecture is not about that. It's about a simplistic representation of something that is complex, of a complex program. If you can achieve that with just a single clear flow plate, which is a warehouse shed, do it. Why stop yourself? Because that's the most effective, efficient way of doing it. I think we forget all of that in architecture, when in the need to sort of call ourselves out as different, and in the need to innovate. And that is a very dangerous trend. And that is why we see publication out of publication today in India of architectural masterpieces, so to speak. But look at what our cities are like.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Interestingly, what's happening now is that, like, organically, our conversation is melding into what would technically be our next conversation, which is next Saturday.
Yes.
So, and like Rajshree mentioned, we are going to be talking about this whole idea of architectural education versus professional training, and what happens in school and what happens on the field. How one can complement the other, and whether it is happening or not. And we're getting a lot of questions based on that. So I'm going to ask our audience to kind of tune in next week, please, on the 12th of December, again at 6 p.m. We've got a very interesting lineup of speakers. We've got Amrish Arora, Riaz Tayyabji, and Vicky Richardson, who's going to be, they're going to be discussing this topic. But I'm going to have to cut things short now, given that we're over 2 hours, and we've got
Oh my goodness, it didn't feel like that. Yeah, the sun's come out. I'm sure my lighting got better.
Yes, but thank you so
just
much.
To make you all happy, I've got Amit Singh saying thanks, this was refreshing, and have a great Saturday night. So I wish you all a great Saturday night. And let's end with what one of you said, which was architecture has to move the human spirit, and that, I think, is the most important thing at the end of it all. And you've all been so amazing. And, we have so much to thank our outreach partner, Established Communication, media partner, Dezeen, and Design Pathy, and of course, all you amazing speakers. Smita, all the way from San Diego. I hope you can go back and crawl into bed now. And Akshat, and Sanjay, and from Mrinalini and me, a big thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that we have a small team that's working with us to make everything possible. So we have the IDF team, Meher and Nisha, and we've also have Namita, who's taking care of all our backend and logistics for the day, mentored by Siddhant. So thank you all. And of course, like Rajshree said, everybody across, we've had people tune in from across the world on Facebook, on Instagram, on Zoom. And we're very grateful to be able to have these conversations and to make them, approachable and accessible to each one and everyone across the platform. And thank you so much for sparing your Saturday night, Akshat and Sanjay, and your, I don't know, Saturday early morning, Friday night, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Smita. But thank you all so much. Please tune in again. And and honestly, for people who have more questions for our speakers, feel free to write into us on our on the IDF or our personal social media handles, and we'll try to forward them to Akshat. We'll spare them the sort of influx of job applications. But I'm sure, it's interesting because people are applying to Gensler, and Gensler is trying to poach Akshat. So there's an interesting sort of dynamics happening over here. But, I'm glad that we are being able to facilitate this. If nothing else, a lot of, we're opening a new market.
Thank you, and good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Akshat, call me. Akshat, just write to me. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Which means there's an opening in architecture discipline. I'm out of a job, so. Oh, good. See you guys. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.